morning, members of the Fourth Estate. Thank you for joining us for this routine election series countdown press conference by the Citizens Coalition for Change. We meet very difficult times for the Citizens Coalition for Change and for Zimbabweans at large. As you know that we went for by-elections on the 26th of March, where the Citizens Coalition for Change emerged victorious and garnered seats in parliament and in local authorities in different parts of the country. Since then, we have been on a program of action to prepare for the next plebiscite, which is set to happen as per the Constitution in 2023. So this press conference intention and objective is to give updates to members of the Fourth Estate, the people of Zimbabwe and the world at large in terms of the situation in relation to the election. So this press conference is about elections. So I'm going to quickly go into the reports that we have in terms of the electoral preparedness and the environment in our country. The major worrying trend that the Citizens Coalition for Change is worried about is the surging of politically motivated violence in different parts of the country, which has a huge bearing in terms of the outcome of the 2023 election. We have seen an attack, deliberate political attack on members of the Citizens Coalition for Change, but not only just to political activists, but also to members of the media. We have seen attack to lawyers. We have seen attack to members of parliament. And I'll draw in particular case the arrest of our members of parliament, Honorable Job Sikala and Honorable Godfrey Stole. And more importantly, the death of CCC activist Mo Blessing Ali, and the unfortunate arrest of people who are actually victims. 13 of our activists are actually in detention as I'm speaking to you right now in relation to the political violence that happened in Chitungiza, in Nyatsime area. We've also seen violence happening in Murewa, politically motivated violence leading to the burning of our house for our champion in Murewa, and of course in Mashonaland West. Our members were assaulted in Chekutu and Karipa because of being members of the Citizens Coalition for Change. And there's a deliberate criminalization of the yellow color in this country, particularly in the countryside, which is a worrying trend which we want to draw to the attention of the people of Zimbabwe and media and every right-thinking Zimbabwean interested in the democracy of our country. In Zarabani, our member Abraham Membere was and has been receiving threats from well-known members of Zanu PF, and the worrying trend really for us is that perpetrators are moving scot-free. In particular, a Zanu PF councillor is moving scot-free after inciting and initiating and leading terror attack on members of the alternative. We've obviously seen threats of violence by members of Zanu PF, and the rank and file of Zanu PF is our political opponent, in particular the spokesperson of Zanu, addressing a press conference and making claims that any other government which is not Zanu PF is not going to be allowed to rule this country, whether by the securocrats, the veterans and so forth. And of course, Mr. Mnangagwa himself was recorded on the 23rd of last month in Kweru in Bata, inciting members of Zanu PF that they're not going to allow any puppet organization to lead this country, which is a very unfortunate circumstance of incitement of public violence, and of course the selective application of the law, which is a very worrying trend. And I want to reiterate that members of the Citizens Coalition for Change have not been spared from this selective application of the law. You know that literally all the members of the CCC movement and the top echelons have been in and out of the courts for different concocted charges. Honorable Job Sikala was arrested not as a member of parliament, not just as an activist, not just as a politician, but was in the court of doing his work as a lawyer representing Mo Blessing Ali's family after the unfortunate incidents. So it's a very worrying trend. And we have seen, obviously, the attack of trade unionists. You know that Open Masaraure, a member of the Amalgamated Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe, has been arrested. And of course, the Secretary General, Robson Chere, is also been in prison. They've been in and out of prison, which is a worrying trend, and an outside to the broad democratic contingent. We have also been worried about the attempt to try and close democratic space by the continuation of the Patriotic Bill, whose intention and objective is to criminalize and capture and monitor and direct the functioning of civil society. And you know that for any democracy to function, there has to be an active civil society that holds the government to account, and of course speak for and on behalf of the oppressed. And of course the attack on the media, as I've mentioned before, is a very worrying trend, because without an independent and protected media houses, we face problems in terms of our attainment of democracy and free speech, and of course the freedom to do their work. There have also been problems with the Electoral Commission, and I think that is an evergreen subject. We mentioned before the by-election that we are getting into by-election to test ZEC in terms of his credibility. And what has been proven beyond any scientific doubt that the Citizens Coalition for Change wants to reiterate is that ZEC continues to fail on the integrity test. With the recent appointments of commissioners in the Electoral Commission, which has been a problem, particularly in the court of the public opinion. For us, the ZEC's fidelity to the Constitution has got a bearing to the future of this country, because with contested election, and Zimbabwe has had a problem since 1980 of successive disputed election. And the objective of the Citizens Coalition for Change is to try and untangle and disentangle that problem, which is centered in and around disputed election. We think that the governance problem in this country is born out of contested elections, and at the center of contested election is the role of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, and the continued chicanery and tomfoolery that has been exhibited by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission as a bearing not just to political players but also to the ordinary people. If you look at the report I've just had with me, a report which I think has been shared publicly by the Electoral Resource Center, which shows that even in terms of the target voter registration by the commission itself of 1 million, only 265 people were able to register during the Bliss exercise. Why? Because ordinary people have lost confidence in ZEC's fidelity to the Constitution. So the conduct and behavior of ZEC has a bearing in terms of how Zimbabweans exercise their right to universal suffrage, in particular the right to vote. And this is an important right to vote, because for those who have followed the trajectory and the history of this country, at the center of the liberation struggle was the sacrosanctity and the right to vote. And the bastardization of that right by the behavior and conduct of the Commission has got a bearing to the future of this country. But more importantly, we want to reiterate as the Citizens Coalition that the conduct and behavior of ZEC has a bearing in terms of how Zimbabwe conducts itself in the post-election period. You know that we have been grappling with Zimbabwe's international isolation, and to resolve that we have to resolve domestic issues, and domestic issues begin by how do we resolve and conduct elections. So we as the Citizens Coalition are engaged in process to make sure that we engage the African Union, we engage SADC to resolve these domestic problems of elections. We believe, and we are going to produce our document which is titled Prepare, which is about the conditions of elections, so that political players agree on what is necessary so that we don't have disputed election. Because an election is a cycle. There's a pre-election period, there's an election period, and a post-election period. And we believe that the people of Zimbabwe and all interested parties must be able to sit down and have a conversation. Zanu PF, CCC, NCN, all the political parties, and of course members of the church, the media, civil society, trade unions, to agree on the conditions for elections in this country. So we have We are going to be launching our reform program to get to the next issue on reforms. We are going to be launching our minimum reform demands, which articulate including but not limited to the issues of the right to vote, the printing and storage of the ballot, the conduct and independence of the Electoral Commission, and other issues which we are going to be launching so that we railroad the reform program in this country. And we believe that there must be dialogue to be able to resolve key minimum reforms that are needed so that the credibility of election in this country is resolved. And of course, there is the issue of delimitation. We are engaged with the process to make sure that delimitation produces an outcome that is favorable to democracy and favorable, of course, to the progress in this country. And it must obviously be informed by the scientific census process, but more issues are needed in terms of delimitation. One of it is about transparency in the process, and we are worried by the statements by Honorable Ziyambi, which has got a bearing on the credibility of delimitation process. Just this morning, we received communication from the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission about its intention to open voter inspection process. We have said it very clear that the voters' roll is one of the issues at the center of electoral contestation in this country. We believe that the voters' roll must be given to all contesting parties ahead of time, as per the provision of the electoral law and, of course, the provisions of the Constitution. We believe that the regional players must be able to be worried about the situation in our country. That's why we've developed a program and process to make sure that we engage regional and our continental and, of course, international players in line with what was recommended in the AU and the SADC report of the 2018 election, and of course to make sure that there is involvement of all political parties and that there is agreement so that the credibility, as I've said before, is resolved. And of course, we've also engaged with the commissions in this country, in particular the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission and the Human Rights Commission, so that we resolve the issues of violence. We believe as the Citizens Coalition for Change that no one must lose their life on account of politics. And the Commission is mandated to prevent violence, not just to monitor and give reports, but we believe that the Commission must be able to prevent the surging of politically motivated violence and, of course, the application of the law, particularly dealing with perpetrators of violence. Of course, media freedom is a key issue. We believe that there must be opening of media space for political contestation so that politics remains a game of those with superior ideas and dominant policy programs to be able to attract our people, because the surging of political violence has a bearing on citizens' participation in elections. Members of the Fourth Estate, the people of Zimbabwe, this is our statement in terms of our elections watch. Today, this is what has been on our table, and I would take questions if there are any questions in relation to our engagement in elections. Thank you very much. I think I would invite our elections department so that in case there are some specific issues that you might want to be addressed. Thank you. You can introduce yourself and ask your questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ostalos. I'm Miriam from Newsweek. If I heard you correctly, you talked about the party's plans to launch a reform program. Can you please tell us what it is about?
Okay. Thank you very much. So we're going to announce to the media and the people of Zimbabwe our reform program. The reason being, as we have mentioned, that there must be electoral reforms in this country. We have engaged with all the stakeholders to make sure that the election is free, fair and credible. The 7 minimum demands that we make, as I've said, include issues around the voters' roll, issues around media freedom, issues around the printing, storage and distribution of the ballot paper, and of course the independence of the commission itself. If you look at the recent debate around ZEC commissioner, who happens to be a child of a member of Zanu PF, a vice president, it's a worrying trend, because objectivity, just like justice, must not just be seen, but must be felt to be done. That is the basic principle. And principles of natural justice, which obviously we have obviously been worried by the fact that our members of parliament have not been co-opted into the Standing Order and Rules Committee, which was interviewing ZEC commissioners. And this assault and undermining of the legislature in Zimbabwe is a big problem, because Zimbabwe cannot continue in the pathway of executive tyranny. We're a constitutional democracy. The judiciary must be independent. The legislature must be able to hold the executive to account. And the legislature must be allowed to do the law, must be able to construct the law, and must be able to be independent. And of course, the executive must be able to conduct itself in the manner dictated by the constitution in this country. But the current present system is dominance of the executive and polarization of institutions of government and undermining of rule of law and the principle of separation of power. So we believe that those issues must be resolved. Parliament must be allowed to do its work so that there is credibility and ZEC's fidelity to the constitution. As I've said, there's got a bearing in how citizens participate in the election. So that's why we are going to be launching our program. And we think that the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission and anyone interested in the Zimbabwean electoral processes must be able to ensure that ZEC conducts itself in a manner dictated by the law, because the Citizens Coalition for Change is interested, just like any other stakeholder in the electoral process, so that we are able to resolve the issue of successive disputed election that has poisoned our politics and consequently affected the governance and the economy in this country. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
2 questions from me. First, I just want to seek clarity regarding the ZEC commissioner who was recently appointed. Is your bone of contention with this one particular commissioner, or are you happy with the other commissioners that were appointed to ZEC? That's the first. And secondly, what action are you going to take now that the appointment has been made, and is there any cause or a recourse to your objections?
Thank you.
Secondly, you spoke about dialogue. Clearly, Zanu PF is not willing to dialogue. So who are you going to be dialoguing with? You said dialogue is critical to achieve some of your aims. So who are you going to be dialoguing with? Thank you.
The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission appointment of commissioners, we have made it very clear that we have a bone of contention, in particular with the appointment of a commissioner who's a daughter of Mohadi, because as I've explained, that it's got a bearing on the integrity and the independence of the commission. Look, Mohadi is an electoral contender in the 2020 election as vice president, and it has got a bearing on obviously its integrity, because one can't be a judge where they are an interested party in. And then in terms of the action, look, we have said, number one, we are going to be using Parliament as the point of entry to make sure that we question and find redress to the issue of this particular appointment. Number two, we believe that to save whatever is left of the integrity of the commission, the said commissioner must just resign. If you read and listen to the interview, that was any right-thinking Zimbabwean can tell that the person is not fit for the job. It is no brainer. It is no conversation. So anyone interested to not just to the fidelity of the commission to the constitution, but also to its credibility, whatever is left of ZEC's credibility can be saved by making sure that the said person must be able to resign. And we obviously, in terms of our third course of action, we, as a Citizens Coalition for Change, we have said that the commissioner must resign and do the right thing, because we don't want to invoke Section 59 of the Zimbabwean Constitution as a point of entry and exercise our displeasure through petitioning and demonstrating against the commission. So we believe that there is room for this thing to be addressed before we invoke Section 59 of the Zimbabwean Constitution. In terms of dialogue, look, Zanu PF is not about, this country is not owned by Zanu PF. And Mr. Mnangagwa must know that. The demand for a dialogue is because we are pushing the envelope of conversation. We are pushing the envelope of peace and stability, because if there is no conversation on what must happen, it has a bearing on the future stability of this country. So it's not about them politically not being interested. It's about the people of Zimbabwe. This is what the people of Zimbabwe want. People of Zimbabwe want a genuine, authentic leadership that must take this country forward. And we believe that for the purpose of stability in this country, there must be conversation. That's why we are obviously engaging with our partners in the region, and of course progressive Africans, so that they help us in this particular process, because we believe that, for example, my brother, you're from the SAPC, you know that it's in the interest of the South African government to make sure that Zimbabwe resolve its domestic issues, because the surging and movement and migration of Zimbabwean people into across Limpopo is not just a foreign policy issue to the South African government, but of course it's a domestic issue. That's why we have to resolve our own issue, so that our people are not reduced to second-class citizens across the different parts of the world. So we must resolve our own issues as Zimbabweans, and any genuine Zimbabweans who has fidelity to the country of Zimbabwe and is a patriot must understand that we must be able to have a conversation about elections in this country, so that we don't have disputed elections. Because if we have got disputed elections, Zimbabwe cannot continue in this vicious cycle, because it has a bearing on the stability in terms of the economy, and of course in terms of our social service that we provide to the people of Zimbabwe. So that's why we have to resolve the issue of elections. I think I've answered that, unless something
Okay,
to add.
yes,
I'll give my colleague.
Okay, thank you. Ostalos spoke about the 7, key issues that we envisage as the CCC with regards to electoral reforms. And one other issue is, which is most importantly, is the independence of, not just ZEC, but also the other state institutions. And with regards to independence, we speak on the issue of, the selection of, commissioners, that are supposed to be independent. And, as a party, we have said that we're looking at an expert-driven selection process. And when we look at the issue of how Mohadi's daughter was appointed, we start to question as the CCC to say, really, what value addition is she going to bring, to the commission? So what expertise? This is what we want to know as citizens, as the people of Zimbabwe, to say, okay, fine, the various commissioners that have been appointed, what value addition are they going to bring? What changes are they going to bring into the commission? So this is why we are saying it's not just about, about her being appointed, but even all the other commissions as well. We want an audit to say, okay, with these various commissioners, what are they bringing, to the electoral table as mandated by the Constitution of Zimbabwe?
Thank you very much, Champion Ellen. Is there any other question? I take it that there is clarity. I want to conclude by urging Zimbabweans to, as I remember, I mentioned that there is, of course, the issue of voter registration, which we believe that the Commission must be able to open up a process to make sure that we register our people, and this time to avail identity documents. The Registrar General's office has a mandate to make sure that they provide identity documents to our people. We urge Zimbabweans to register as voters, because this is an important part of the electoral process. so that we're able to do our part as the political leadership, and the Citizens Coalition and citizens must be able to help us to push the most important envelope of making a democratic breakthrough in this country. Members of the fourth estate, I cannot thank you much for your time that you have availed to us to cover our press conference. The Citizens Coalition for Change continues to be growing in terms of its social base and focusing on the task at hand to make sure that we win Zimbabwe for change. Thank you very much. Have a good day.